Boom, there we go. We're up and live. Welcome to Overdose and Chill. I'm with my good man, Lockie from Funny Business and All Squares. How are you, Lock?
Mate, I'm all the better for seeing you, mate. How are you?
It's been a big week. It's been one of those long weeks. I'd love to tell you more. I'm kind of tied up in NDAs up to my waist, but we've got a few little power moves coming up. There will be some big news hopefully in the market, but it keeps you on your toes.
It's hard to control, isn't it? When you're living in it and everything's happening and you just want to blurt it all out, don't you?
Oh, you want to share it with everyone, bro. Yeah, of course you do. Yeah,
100%.
And you're joining us. You're not in Melbourne, are you? You're
Torquay, mate. I'm down the coast. Yeah, made the move right before lockdown 2.0. So very lucky and blessed to be living where I'm living. And thank my lucky stars every day, mate. It's a beautiful place. And yeah, it's been good exploring the suburb, I suppose, and the Torquay people. So yeah, it's been a smart move, I think, from my end.
So was that intellectual foresight or just pure luck?
Nah, look, mate, the missus got a job down here in real estate. So I was working remotely at the time and sort of had the inkling that things were just going to be more remote moving forward. So it was like, if I don't do it now, when am I going to do it? And it worked out 2 days before. We had the moving vans there ready to rock and roll, and we were in and haven't looked back since, mate. I mean, I'm very lucky. I live in this big house and on the coast. Couldn't have imagined lockdown any more comfortable, I suppose.
Good on you, man. Good on you. Right, so for everyone that's tuning in, if you post comments in whether you're looking on Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, we can see your comments. So if you've got any questions for Locke, jam them in there. I expect Robbie's going to be the first one in there just to hurl some abuse at you, man.
He's
just a bit of background for everyone. One of the things we're going to talk about is the Funny Business podcast, which is Lockie and Robbie's kind of a pet project. Lockie's also the community manager. Is that right? Community director?
Community lead, I suppose, but whatever you want to call it. Yeah, whatever sounds good.
Community lead for All Squares, which is like a boutique tech recruitment agency. So hoping to get a little bit of jazz and insight on what's happening in the tech recruitment world, maybe a bit of insight for how people should be planning their careers. And then love to learn more about the hustle of building out the podcast. So wind it all back for us, Locke. Wind it back 5-10 years. How do we get to today? Where does Locke come from?
I suppose it was weird after, knowing that I'm going to be on this chat and having to think about the journey and how it's all unfolded for me. It's been a bit weird. I mean, spent my early 20s, done a year in Canada and really opened my eyes to different culture and experiences. So I was like, really changed my perspective on life. I grew up in Jacana, which is near Broadmeadows in Melbourne. So yeah, I mean, just getting out of my comfort zone in that sense was really good for me. Come back and done a lot of hospitality work, so a lot of people-facing roles. And then, yeah, Robbie, who co-hosts the Funny Business podcast with me, wanted to start up a slides company, and we called it Obi & Co. And he just wanted a hand, and so he asked if I wanted to jump on board as a co-founder. So never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be involved in the business world at all. Never even thought about it, but thought it'd be cool to build a brand and have some fun. I suppose the social sort of aspect as well. Pumping the marketing side out was something that I was super keen on. So learned a bunch of skills there, launched that business. We didn't plan to be the biggest shoe company or slides company in the world, but it was more like just learning them skills to equip myself if I did want to enter the sort of corporate world. So we ended up selling that business a couple of years later on Marketplace of all places. I think they're in Nigeria at the moment, which is a funny story.
Wow.
Yeah, so we learnt the lessons from that, and I suppose it was just about documenting our experience and building something from the ground up and just seeing what it was like, getting a bit of a taste. And we realised, we woke up one morning and we're like, we don't really want to be shoe salesmen for the rest of our lives. It's not really our passion. So we sort of moved into the content game. And so we'd go out to small businesses like cafes and ask if they need help with their socials. I mean, looking back now, I'm like, what a noob. And I knew nothing, but I suppose it was just getting outside my comfort zone and pushing myself in that sense, which was the most important thing for me. So, started that while still working hospitality jobs, doing the night shift, managing the Union Hotel in Ascot Vale. So that was a ball there. Kind of lost, still didn't really know what to do. And then I just knew that I couldn't do the night shifts anymore in terms of the hours. I needed to design my life a little bit and take responsibility. I feel like I was just relying on others a lot for my own happiness and where I was going with my life. So I think it was more about just finding a bit of purpose and taking responsibility for the decisions and the outcomes in my life. So I was lucky enough that it was LinkedIn where it all happened. Robbie tagged me in a post.
Just pause on that. What's that life moment? What's that sliding doors moment, which is the fuck, I need to start taking my life seriously? Was that just a night on the rails and it was like, okay, I'm done?
Yeah, I suppose it was just a build-up, mate. I was just sort of plodding along, and I sort of felt like I wasn't exceeding. I wasn't making the most of my potential in life, I suppose. And I was getting a bit older, and I was like, well, what's going to happen? I've always sort of felt like I've lived a different life to a lot of other people, and like friends and stuff like that, in terms of uni choices and stuff. So I knew it was going to be a bit of a different path, but I think it was more about just taking a bit of ownership. And the build-up, I think it was just the late nights and just affecting all other areas of my life, like relationships, where it's like I can't really hang out with my missus Talia, I'm working all this, it's just too hard. And I was like, well, I'm 27, 28, I'm trying to balance all this other stuff. And I think it was just about, I think it wasn't really a moment, it was just a build up. And and I was lucky enough that Robbie tagged me in a post on LinkedIn with Jess Harwood, who's a big fan of Overdose Digital, who introduced me to you guys last year when I first started at Just Digital People. So ended up going in for an interview there and got into the recruitment space, which I knew nothing about. And I quickly realized that a lot of people don't really like recruiters in terms of when they're pests and stuff. And I suppose I didn't do enough research going in. I'm sort of like a yes fan. So I just sort of went in and I couldn't figure out why people didn't like me straight away. Like I was sending out these messages and they're like pretty much fuck off or not responding. So I was like, well, they actually knew me, they would, if they knew me, I wasn't coming from that sort of sense. I actually really want to help you find a good job. And I suppose it was like, how do I get my personality out? So when COVID hit, I suppose it was not always brewing that we wanted to start a podcast, me and Rob, but it was more like we wanted to do something. And it was like, well, I live on LinkedIn. It's a bit boring. Like this, I suppose the stuff I'm seeing at the moment, it's all the information's all correct. Like not all correct, but like there's a lot of good information and content out there, but it's done in sort of a boring, not engaging way. So I was like, well, if I can show a bit more of my personality and what I'm about and what my mission and purpose is in this space, then maybe it'll be easier for me to build them relationships. And, so that was the approach sort of with the podcast. Same with Rob. We sort of realized that, throughout our career and designing our life is more about the networks and the people that we meet. So it was never really about monetizing the podcast to make money or anything like that. It was all about building them connections and networking in an industry that we're both really excited about. So it kind of all snowballed pretty quickly. We had some friends who were doing some cool things like Nick Pulse, Liz Watson, a few others who we had friends help us out early jumping into the pod. So good people like that help us get more good guests, and it sort of snowballed from there. And here we are now, and it's been a bit of a wild ride, man.
So tell me, most sort of 25 to 30-year-olds aren't really spending their life on LinkedIn. They were on the gram and probably gravitated off Facebook. What had you in there as a relatively early adopter that you were seeing value out of LinkedIn? Because there was a lot of crap in there for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it was just stuff that I was like the suits and it's sort of the same sort of stuff all the time. And I don't know, being in recruitment, I need to live on LinkedIn. I always had a LinkedIn, but I never really checked it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people. But then I quickly realized the potential of the platform, and and it's not really the same metrics as you would with an Instagram. Like Instagram's flooded with all these influencers, and people have clocked that platform and doing really well, but it's not my style. You know what I mean? Like we're not the best designers. We're not going to take the best photos. We're not going to do the best, whatever. We're going to tell a real story. And I think LinkedIn gave us that platform where we could actually do it. So it was kind of like luck timing. Like it wasn't really an intentional thing. Like we never really wanted to even go on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything like that. It was purely meant to be a LinkedIn project. And we'll just pop it on all the other stuff and just see what happens. And I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
I think some of the best stuff comes out of adversity. We started Overdose and Chill literally by accident. right? We had all these physical events where we had clients and partners all lined up to come. COVID came and smashed that. And we were like, shit, we've got all these people lined up. We better use this time smartly. So we did our first half a dozen on Instagram. We got decent engagement, but the trickle down was pretty low, right?
Yeah.
And so, we actually, but what was interesting was that people valued decent conversations that were raw, honest, to the point. And I think, recording and broadcasting those lives means that there's the bullshit filter kind of comes down as well. So before we dive into funny business, we need to give a shout out to your new governors then. So tell us what All Squares is all about.
Yeah, Julian and Danny, man. Really excited to be joining them guys. Joined them as a community lead 4 weeks ago. And just the reputation. I'm very fresh. I'm impressing. I'm in the impress mode where I'm doing everything right. Not that anyway, but just making sure I'm all over it. So it's been a busy sort of 4 weeks, but no, it's been really, really good. I mean, one of the big draw cards for me for them guys was that they're family men, and I know that's something like that I try and tell candidates that I'm working with when you're making the next move. Like, really think about the skills that you want to learn. So. I suppose them having a young family and balancing that with work and the startup sort of scene in that space, I can see that firsthand through obviously remote onboarding at the moment, but through Zoom calls and how they manage all that sort of stuff as well. So it's the added skill set on top of the actual technical stuff that I'm learning as well. So for me, it's been an unreal start and a massive learning curve for me. These guys have been around the digital landscape for the last 10 or so years, so they really know their network and the community, and I'm picking up what they're putting down. I'm a really big fan of both of them guys, and Sammy as well. He's a 29-year-old my age, and just having chats about similar stuff that we do. Content, LinkedIn. It's just good to flex your brain a little bit and have them conversations and being involved with cool people doing cool things and throwing ideas out.
So when I think recruiting is a really interesting space because it's been disrupted so hard by LinkedIn, right? You've got guys like us, we've got 250 staff. We've used a recruiter once. I told you about that story. But LinkedIn is giving us as employers all the tool sets that you used to have, right? You used to have your select database, and we now pay $100 a month, and I can ping anyone. We have a couple of internal guys now who essentially use LinkedIn as their full tool set to outreach. So I guess my question there is, how do you keep maintaining value as a recruiter beyond what is internalizing as that process?
Yeah. So I suppose it's more about, I suppose for a lot of candidates, it's the flexibility in terms of the different options, the different companies and stuff. So I suppose that works. And that's the same thing like we were chatting about earlier. It's the people who sort of want to climb up the ladder and change and grow. So it's about finding the other clients and companies that they can sort of grow internally and get them skill sets, so matching them up with that. So it's more detailed sort of approach. But I suppose, like you said, there are internal tools now where people can use LinkedIn to its full potential. But I suppose it's just the variety of different options and different networks available, I suppose.
Mean. And what are you seeing in the market in that digital space? Where's the gaps? What are the jobs you're finding hard to fill? Is it a skills shortage in market, or are you struggling jobs to list? Where's the market at?
Yeah, so I suppose our focus to the next I suppose a couple of months, even the next year, is in the DevOps space. I'm just learning all this stuff. So in terms of the market and stuff like that, I'm getting a bit of a crash course with Danny and Jules at the moment. So for me, it's just been a bit of a learning experience. But yeah, mate, that DevOps space we'll be focusing on the next sort of year or so. With everything moving, digitally, I suppose the e-com world's booming. So that things are going well there. It's just sort of different opportunities. It's now a good time to actually have a look and see what people are doing and different moves that they're making, because like I said, everything's sort of come down to an even playing field and people are doing some funky things. So it's actually a good time to do a bit of research and consume a bit of content and figure out where the gaps are, because there's plenty of different things coming up in the market. So I think that's something that I've noticed a lot as well. What about yourself?
Oh, look, we've been through an interesting journey where, 3-4 years ago, when we had no presence, we couldn't get anyone to apply for a job. Now we're really fortunate that we've got, staff from our competitors see what we're doing and say, I want to jump on that ship. So we're pretty fortunate now that, if we go and post up a job on LinkedIn, we'll get 100 applicants every time now. And I'd say every 48 hours, we'll have someone that reaches out to us and say, how do I get involved? Love the vibe of what you're doing. And, that drives great staff retention. I think what my staff particularly like about Overdose is that we sold them a vision when they first came on board that we wanted to build this thing, and we've gone and done it, and we've kind of 5x'd above where we thought we could take it, and they love that journey, right? So I think that they get to kind of live vicariously through that brand and be part of that journey, right? I think more and more people are not so consumed just about their salary. They want to work with a company that's got a bit of purpose, a company with a bit of vision, somewhere where you're proud to tell your mum that I work there, right? And that doesn't have to be the biggest beast. It can be the coolest, kookiest little startup going. But it's having something that is moving into fresh territories. And I guess what we're really proud of is now that we have the ability to help people grow their careers as well as a bigger shop, right? So it means people can move sideways, they can move upwards, they can explore different parts of digital, and they get all that exposure. So we haven't struggled recently to find talent, but I know that there is a glut of talent offshore that is very keen to come onshore. Now, obviously, with COVID, that means that's not possible. So a lot of the local talent, we've seen a few people that have been a bit attached to their jobs and felt it was a bit risky to make moves, right? And kind of it doesn't feel like the right time. That's a bit scary. I know from other colleagues in the industry, there's certainly not as much great e-commerce talent as there used to be. We're actually starting to change our hiring and training policy a little bit. We're starting to hire a few more juniors and start our own kind of training courses and, blood people in for 3 months before they actually jump on the tools, taking on a few more interns and graduates and helping those guys build their careers out. But it's always up and down, man. It's always a competitive landscape. And we're in the business of selling time and people, right? We're essentially a consultancy. So it's not a de facto, I just need 5 people with that job skill. It's actually hiring the very best of those people, because those people then define our brand and our reputation. So, you're going to run out of good people eventually. But I expect that what's happened through COVID is there'll be a lot of people that are trying to swing their careers towards digital now in some shape or form.
100%, mate. 100%. Couldn't agree anymore. You hit the nail on the head there. It's going to be interesting, but they're the opportunities now. I think people are thinking bigger now with everything turned digital, like in terms of going globally and scaling really quickly. I think everyone's obsessed with the scaling and smashing it out, which is good. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. You just need to make sure you got everything sort of ready to rock and roll. But it's interesting times, isn't it? And I think like brand and culture, you know what I mean? Like you've created something where people are just like, yeah, I want to work. The story's there, you know what I mean? It's the people just, I want to join, I want to drink the Kool-Aid, So I feel like you've built that brand. You spent the time on crafting that story and the essence of what you're doing. And that's the same thing. It's purpose. You want to solve actual problems. You know what I mean? You don't just want to be another cog in the machine. Like it's more than, like you said, a salary. Like people now are realizing, geez, it's not all about the money, and people who are money sort of focused, like they might get the short-term sort of success and stuff, but you really need to find that purpose,
Yeah, I reckon you're going to see a couple of trends that will happen in the digital space. One is that historically, there's been a reliance on agency and consultants to build these solutions out for you. That's going to get more and more internalized, right? So a lot of the bigger clients that we're talking to, they're building internal capable teams and looking at these hybrid models of where I want all of this great stuff from my agency, but I also want to mitigate some of my costs and have a internalized team as well. So I think you'll see that as a growth thing. I think the other thing that you're starting to see, which is really interesting, and I've got a few more gray hairs than you, mate, but if you looked at new waves of CEOs that are coming through organizations, 10 years ago, that was your CFO and your COO was becoming the next CEO, right? what you're now seeing is two trends that we see. One is dramatic increase in female-led businesses, right? That's happening. And then secondly, the leadership is moving much more towards that consumer centricity, right? So that person in my organization who fundamentally understands the customer, knows how to run a P&L, has got all the other creds to be a CEO, but it's not just the finance guy, right? So you're seeing CMOs and chief digital officers move into these power plays. I think that will only increase, right? Where the leaders in business who understand their customers will become the future leaders of those businesses. Yeah.
100%. Everyone's just user folk. Like you got to be like, I talk to designers all day, and that's their passion, is just like really digging deep, solving them problems, and really getting in the nitty gritty, because it does feel good when you are doing that sort of work. You know what I mean? And solving them problems. It's a bit of purpose. It's a bit of passion. It's a reason why you wake up out of bed.
For sure, man. For sure. All right, let's jump over to funny business. So Robbie hit you up and you thought, fuck it, let's start a podcast. Who was number one? Who was that first person? How do you start a podcast? You just
so we were actually talking about it this morning. I was like, I don't actually remember the conversation. I feel like I've been doing this for fucking 20 years, to be honest. You know what I mean? The last 6 months has just been boom, boom, boom. So I was actually struggling to remember, but I feel from what Robbie said this morning, it was, I asked him, I go, let's just do the fucking podcast. Let's start it. We know Nick's a legend, Nick Pulse. So he's a good friend of ours. So yeah, we got him on board, and then I think he helped in terms of the credibility, in terms of the first guest that we had. He's a really cool dude doing awesome stuff in the agile space. So we were very fortunate to get him on board very early. Avi Zelenko as well, who was working at Atlassian at the time in the cloud stuff. So he was a real coup for us early, and then he's moved into LinkedIn now. He's in charge of the feed. So actually, up Toddy, with a few tips and tricks. I reckon. He's tight-lipped. I've been peppering him on LinkedIn. But he's keeping it pretty sealed at the moment. But he's a good person to know.
I'll tell you this, and this is genuine. We saw a massive spike as soon as we started posting live content to LinkedIn. Right? So we saw we would usually gain maybe 10 to 20 followers a day on our normal kind of organic traffic. That suddenly jumped to 50 as soon as we did two things. We started posting all of our jobs. So we left off Seek and moved that onto LinkedIn and started posting live content. And I think the algorithm rewarded us somewhere through that. You never quite know how, where, or why, but we started getting all of these third and second level connections following the page. And we kind of jumped from 8,000 to 9,500 in about a month. So there's definitely something on there where if you are providing authentic, genuine content and using every feature of the platform, the algorithm's rewarding you somewhere through there, right?
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? Like they want to reward you for using the full feature and the full platform, like I would as a company. You know what I mean? We were talking to Liam Scanlon, Eat Your Water, the hat that you're rocking today.
Liam, he sent me a free hat. Good on you, Liam.
He's a legend, isn't he? But he had all the tips and tricks about that. He's like, just keep it simple. Like they don't want you to fail. You know what I mean? If you're using all the features and doing the right thing, like being a good boy, they're gonna reward you. So it makes sense, because I remember last time we were chatting, you were trying to get the badge to go live or whatever on LinkedIn. So it has worked.
Yeah. So it took us about 2 months to get this badge, which allowed you to do what we're doing right now. So broadcasting live on LinkedIn. So what we did was we recorded like our first dozen sessions on Instagram. We then ripped the video off of Instagram, posted that back on there. And essentially they actually told you in the instructions, if you post video and we see that there is engagement, we will give you the tick. And it's a bit like trying to get that old Instagram tick, right? There's no one to actually ask. You basically just have to do it, fill in the form and see if it comes back. But it does work, man.
Yeah, because I was going to say that was one thing I was sort of pushing, because it is, if you do have the blue tick, even on Instagram, when you're commenting, and if you are using the platform and engaging, people can see who you are. It's a necessary tool. It is important, but who knows how you get it? Like you said, you just apply, and if it does what it does, and you get it, it's good. But like you said, if it's working, I knew it'd work. Like LinkedIn Live, like people just want to be involved in the real time conversation. And video is important. We don't do any video at the moment, but we definitely know that we need to do way more of it, because that's how people like to consume their content, especially podcasts and long form talks like this. So it's definitely on our radar, man. But you've done an amazing job. I mean, like I'm looking through all your past guests that you've had on here, I'm going, oh shit, mate, you must have run out early, or what's going on here? I don't know how I got the invite, but it's been
got lucky. That's what you're saying.
Open the bottom of the barrel here, Toddy. But yeah, you know what I mean. Like what you're doing, and it's more like I don't follow content now to sort of see what the content is. It's more about how they're doing it. You know, like how often are they posting? What are they doing? That sort of ticks my mind over a little bit. So I'm a big fan of your work, mate.
Yeah, look, I actually think that the art to it is not overthinking it, right? It's literally, we just spin it up. We've got no script. Let's have a chat, bring good people together. And it's, it's just some authenticity, I guess. That's what kind of drives the engagement. Anyway, back to podcasting, right? So we've managed to do 16 of these. We do one a week. You guys are like up to your 50th more?
Yeah, we've probably recorded about 60, but we've released 50 guest episodes. Yeah, it's been, now that we're looking back, we sort of just put the pressure on ourselves earlier that we're just going to do it and commit to it. And we learned a lot along the way about speed to value. And I suppose when we had them connections and stuff like that, and we had all these, meaningful relationships with people, we were building them pretty early. So I was like, well, I suppose it's just capitalizing on that and really smashing it out because we could, at the time when it was just boring, I suppose we're just trying to keep our mind off other stuff as well, So I was like, let's just immerse ourselves in this. And honestly, it still feels like a bit of a dream, mate. It feels like I'm going to wake up one day and what's going on. But the last 6 or 7 months of just pumping out 2 episodes a week, now 3, it's been good, but now it's sort of become more like a fun thing. At the start, it was more like a nervous thing, like, oh, we need to make sure it's good, But now...
Robbie's throwing you, bro.
What's he saying?
51, he said.
51, there you go. Well, 51. We've done 51. So we've, I think it's just been...
So have you worked out that right cadence of, if we post more than 2 a week, the consumption drops, or, or are you just trying to stress test it, push as much out there and then see when it tapers off?
No. So at the moment now we're rolling things back. So at the time, because we were nothing and no one, we sort of had to just smash it out and get that attention. So now that's done. The first phase we've sort of called it is sort of done. So now it's more about clipping up that content and making it more accessible. So the people who do listen to it can share it with their friends and stuff like that. So and ideally, like, to make it more sustainable, we need to really, we're thinking even about just 1 guest episode a week and then one of us just chatting and just making it sort of easier on ourselves. But I mean, it's kind of, I don't know, we're taking it each day as it comes, but that's sort of the plan at the moment, especially over summer, because we're like, we don't know if people are going to consume podcasts and videos more, or they're going to taper off. We probably should do some more research into that, but it's more, figuring out that sort of stuff and what we're going to do over the holidays. And for the first time in a long time, we're like 2 weeks ahead. So we've been cruising a little bit, and I think that's helped, like, just being able to, batch it up a little bit better and be a bit more responsible in that sense. But
And have you played with the length of the format as well? Is it 15 minutes, half an hour, an hour?
To be honest, mate, we sort of took inspiration from the Rogan sort of setup, where it was just like, if the conversation's good and stuff, we just want to keep it rolling. I mean, we've both got full-time jobs, so sometimes it's hard. We can't sort of keep going down the rabbit hole. There's been a few times we're like, well, we could talk for another 2 hours. Your episode, for example, we could go for another 2 or 3 hours, but it's about, just the constraints at the moment. It's hard, but no, we don't really have a set sort of time. I know that a lot of people sort of think about that sort of stuff, but like you said, it was just not thinking too much about it, sort of doing it. Now it's about refining it and seeing what's working and really looking at the graphs and the stats a bit harder and planning our content better around that. But at the start, it was just, strictly about speed to value. But now, like you said, stripping it back and really getting to the nuts and bolts of it and seeing what works and what doesn't. But the short form content that we're doing so we're going live for the first time on Sunday, and we're going to record a weekly wrap and talk about our, the guests that we've had on, the upcoming guests we've got coming on for the week. And that's like 10, 15 minutes. That's what we've penciled in, but it'll probably go for half an hour, 45 minutes. We're just a bit loose in terms of that. But you were right when you were talking about, not knowing too much. Like, when going into podcasts at the start, I was very like, I've got these questions and I really want to know. And it's kind of like, not an agenda, but it was stuff that we wanted to talk about. And then lately, now it's just been, I just sort of want to know and find out on the fly, like live. So, it's a natural response. I don't want to feel like I know everything. You know what I mean? I really want them to explain what they do. So it's been a learning like that, learning to just chill out. Like, the first, like, I suppose 20 episodes, I was editing for like 4 hours, getting rid of ums and ahs and stuff. And I realized that people just don't really care. You know what I mean? Like, they just get the stuff out there. Don't worry too much, because if I keep doing it like this, I won't be able to sustain it. So it was about caring less, you know, getting rid of stuff and just sort of putting stuff out there. But now it's about ramping it up, because we know the quality's there. It's just about making it sexy, you know?
So I was amazed that when you hit me up to come on the podcast, I thought I'd be coming in to this fucking hyper professional photo studio booth thing. Next minute, it's just a fucking live recording of Zoom, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, for people who want to get started in this space, you don't need any kit. You don't really need any kit, right?
Well, that's the thing. It's like, just get what you need. Like, MVP it. Just like, Zoom's free, like 40 minutes at the start. We didn't even pay for the pro. Tim O'Sullivan's episode 2, that was a funny one. We cut out like 3 times because we left the 40-minute Zoom. Lucky he's a friend, so I love it. You guys are cheap, you know. But it's just about getting the idea out there and testing it. Because once we've done that, we're like, all right, well, we can up it as we go. But mate, our theme song's iMovie. We record on Zoom. There's no backup, and we talk to all these other people who host the podcast as well. Who come on our show, and they're like, you know, we back up 3 or 4 times, and we have all this. And I'm like, oh shit, like maybe we should do that, you know. But so far so good. But you know, who knows down the line? We're probably gonna have to tidy that area up a little bit, I suppose.
Oh, but look, even if you look at what we're doing today, I'm on a Mac, you're on a Mac. We're just talking through our microphones.
Easy.
There's no expensive, right? There's nothing flash in there at all. For those that are interested, we're actually broadcasting using a tool called StreamYard, StreamYard.com. We pay $20 a month for this piece of kit. It allows us to brand up all of our sessions and pushes live across 3 channels. You can pay, I think you can pay like $150 for a pro version that will push out to up to 10 channels at once if you want to go live on, I guess, Twitter or I don't know where else you can go live. But yeah, man, I think anyone who's out there who wants to put out quality content, don't use the technology as an excuse, right? It's cheap, it's simple, it can actually cost you nothing, right?
100%. Just get your ideas out there, test what you're doing. Like, there's no point like spending 2 years on trying to polish this thing up and then you put it out there and no one's interested. You might as well just get the idea out, get the feel, you know? Like, I don't know. One thing I've learned, I suppose, throughout this year is just to let go of attaching myself to an idea or one specific thing. It's about like falling in love with the whole thing and just like, it doesn't matter if this doesn't work out, the next thing's gonna be all right, you know? So it's about backing yourself a little bit. And I feel like that's the biggest lesson I've had to learn, I suppose, throughout the journey, the short journey so far.
Yeah. One of our adages to our staff internally is progress before perfection. Just got to keep moving, moving, you know, because if you know, it's that speed which builds really good companies in my view, in that you're willing to make those mistakes. And it used to be all this called fail fast kind of crap, which I just don't believe in. But what I do believe in is moving at speed. And if you move at speed, you naturally fail fast because you catch it real quick and you're not holding back, you're not procrastinating through that process. So once you record this, you cut it in iMovie, you're then pumping this out onto like Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Does that cost you anything to do that? I've never done that with our content, you know, to push it out.
So at the time we were using a platform called Transistor, and then we were lucky enough to get signed to Acast, which is a Swedish startup company, and they look after the ad sort of revenue space, and yeah, we got signed to them. So then that's a similar thing. That's just where the RSS feed goes out to. So we don't have to pay for that because we're part of the Acast Create team there. So we're lucky enough to get signed there by Adam Rollo, who's doing some. He's moving and shaking. Adam Rollo, he's a really good dude, and really awesome to have a bloke like him on our side. So yeah, we're lucky enough to use Acast, and they've been great. We've been lucky enough to get a lot of one big PR opportunity on the Today Show through Adam there. So pretty surreal. Yeah, it was bloody crazy. So yeah, big shout out to him. He's doing some good stuff there, and I love the team at Acast. They're awesome.
So here's a killer question for you. Can you make a living out of podcasting?
Oh, mate, I'm looking at all these Joe Rogan articles and I'm thinking probably, yeah. Like, this bloke's like pretty much ruling the world, isn't he? I suppose if you're good.
Was it 50 mil or something you got paid?
Oh, yeah, and the rest. You'd be having some secret handshakes under the table for sure. But he'll probably be the next president, won't he? The world's just gone bananas. Like feel like we've lost our innocence, you know, everything's happening.
It's crazy shit. No, but genuinely, can you see a version of this where, you know, you can make a, you know, because that six-figure income that you'd need to say, right, I'm now going to quit my job, I'm just going to become a podcaster. You can't kind of make that just off of ad clicks, surely, can you? You've got to have some, I don't know, is it product placement, or is it people paying on your show because you buy distribution? Is that what it is?
We've got plenty. It's like you, mate. Like, I'm just bubbling at the seams to just tell you everything. Like, we've got some big things in the works, you know, later this year, early next year. But I know we've got a bit of a you know, handshake agreement with Jadden Comerford from Unified at the moment. So he's helping us. He's built careers like Vance Joy, Ocean Alley, Tash Sultana, and stuff like that in the music space. So
podcast now. That's amazing.
Yeah, so we've been chatting with him and catching up with him and Dan, who manages a band called Ocean Alley. We're just spitballing ideas at the moment. So it's pretty crazy, man. Right from the very start, we sort of wanted to treat the podcast as like a bit of a band. So have that approach in terms of showing off our personality and stuff, not just the educational sort of value that we wanted to provide. And it's actually got us in the door in that sort of space. So it's exciting for me because I'm a music nuffy. So yeah, that's what I made. I'm itching to tell everyone everything, but I suppose I can tell that.
All right. So once you've rinsed your friends and families and your LinkedIn network, how did you drive that volume? Because I keep seeing these stats that you're like top 5 podcast in Australia now or something, or you're.
We can say that. I don't know. Yeah. So it works like number of new subscribers. So on Apple, like to get in the charts. So it's more if you like going on the Today Show was a big spike. You know what I mean? A lot of new people finding out about us. So in terms of getting on the new and noteworthy and where other people might see and troll podcasts, that's what you need to do. So I suppose you can work around content around that about getting new subscribers up to get on that new and noteworthy. There's different sort of strategies there, but yeah, I mean, it
doesn't sound like you had a secret formula to make that work. It's just good content and it got picked up.
Well, that's exactly right. And it was like I said earlier, it's almost like we're too busy to really think about anything too much. It's more like, and even absorbing the content. Like I know that everyone talks about burnout, especially working from home and the hours it's stretching, and you know, there's a lot of different things. But it's just about I'm finding like I'm absorbing the information from the guests, and you know, it's been wonderful. But it's just putting through my filter subconsciously and not thinking too much about it, and sort of just backing myself. And that's sort of been, I think, the secret formula for me personally. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I hear it, and I think it's the right story. You know, it's like a band getting discovered. They didn't fake the system. They just wrote good music, and eventually someone took notice. I guess now in our digital world, people can take notice very, very quickly. You know, because this has all been like what 3, 4, 5 months for you.
Mate, we've released our first episode 20th April 420. So it's been six months or whatever it is, but. Honestly, because I was just telling Rob this morning, we've recorded 51 episodes, and it feels like we've done way more podcasts than a lot of other people. We might even have like 2 series or 2 years worth of podcasts. So it's like I feel like we're getting a crash course on like journalism, as well as like learning different skills, like giving people space to talk and share their story. Like I know at the start I was very like, I've got something in my head, I need to get this across, and I'd sort of butt in if I thought it was cool. And now I'm like, well. Just let it go. It's not the time and place, and I'm learning them sort of skills at the moment. So that and people skills like that, you know, it just helps me in my day-to-day job at the moment. You know what I mean? Like just being able to talk to people and have that confidence, I suppose. Yeah.
So a couple of highlights from the podcast. Who's been the favourite guest and given you that mind-bending kind of knowledge bomb, apart from me?
I was going to say, apart from you, mate, we had a great chat about obviously your story and how that all began. That was one of my favourites. I suppose like the big first one for us was Mark Matthews, just because we've seen him on TV all the time and we know his story. He's a cool dude, and you know, reach out to him on LinkedIn and he said yes, he'd be keen, and I'll be like, you're fucking kidding. I remember telling Rob and going, what's life? You know, like this is crazy. I think he was episode 8, so. That was one that stood out for us just in terms of like, oh shit, this might be a thing. Laura Henshaw was another one, just in terms of another person, built the relationship through LinkedIn message. She doesn't check it much, but, it proves that if you go on other platforms where people aren't big and reach out, you can, build them relationships. She was another one. But in terms of stories and stuff like that, I did like Adriano Zumbo. I know he's been in the news, the last couple of years about his businesses and stuff, but really I felt like that was the first time me and Rob were kicking each other under the table going, this guy's like opening up to us and like, are we journalists? You know what I mean? And it was a really good, he had a really good story. And at the end of the day, he's just a bloke who's, he's learned some tough lessons, but he's lived an extraordinary life, and he's one that tackles life head on. So that one's the standout. Tim Ash, I don't know if you've heard of Tim Ash before, author, Unleash Your Primal Brain. He gave us a bit of a lesson, psychology and stuff. He was insane. Jadden was another really good one about how he built, careers and manages talent, and his purpose and passion in life is fucking crazy. Nigel Dalton, mate, what an unreal dude, fellow Kiwi. He's got an unreal story. I mean, the story about, realestate.com and what he's done there, and, just building the relationships with him. I mean, he made me a playlist the other day, and I'm going, what's going on? What's life? Having that contact and I suppose that value just at arm's length. I mean, he's a cool dude. His story on how that all unfolded for him and what he's doing at the moment and the evolution of life and history. He's the first guest to send us any homework. So me and Rob were looking at essays the night before going, fuck, what's this guy going to talk about? And he blew our mind. It was crazy. But yeah, I suppose every guest we've had on's had a really unique story. I know I'm going to say that, but it truly is. But yeah, there's some of the ones that stick out to me the most, I suppose.
So what's that filter that you're running to invite people on? Because it's called Funny Business, but you've got athletes, business owners, startups, fucking chocolate makers. You got everyone on there, right?
Yeah.
What's your bandwidth for where you're looking for? Is it just good humans?
Mate, it's honestly the sniff test. It was just anyone who's cool, who's got a good story to tell, who's creative and a creator and yeah, got a story to tell. It's funny, a lot of people ask that question, what's the criteria for guests? And get a lot of PR agencies going, well, what are you after and stuff. And I was like, to be honest, we just want a good person. You know what I mean? We want a good conversation. We just want to keep it real. So we've been lucky enough that the guests that we've had on so far have all kept it real. And it's been a really interesting journey, and it's gone quickly, and it's hard to obviously thinking about what I'd be saying for this interview. I'm going back thinking, geez, all this happened in the last 6 months. It's like a bit overdrive,
Mm-hmm. All right, mate. Well, we're supposed to do 30 minutes and we've done 43. So give me some, for those that are listening, people who would like to follow a similar path to you and fire up a podcast, give them some tips. What do they do? Is it just start? Just go for it?
Well, I know that's the obvious answer, and it is, but it's start. Don't worry too much about the quality, I suppose. Just tell the story, get the vision, MVP it. Just don't think too much about it. Don't care too much. Be too busy to care. That's what's worked for me. I suppose might burn other people out, but just smashing it and just sort of having a crack and not being scared to make the first move. Like LinkedIn's been really good for us in terms of building the connections. But I mean, if you're going well on Instagram, stay there. You know what I mean? But if you're looking for new avenues and and your LinkedIn's a really good platform, that's definitely helped us, and couldn't recommend that anymore. So if you want to learn about or even just test your ideas and get creative with your content, use LinkedIn. It's a really good platform. You can do anything, share articles, and it's a really good platform to test, I suppose, because people are a lot more receptive on LinkedIn because they treat it like their CV as well. So I don't know. I'd say get LinkedIn, make the first move, have a crack. Don't care what other people think. It's all the cliche stuff, but it's true. It's the reason why it's a cliche.
Out of interest, why do you push your content out on your personal channels and not through a LinkedIn page? Because there's no Funny Business podcast page, right?
Yeah, I don't know either, really, to be honest. I was almost going to ask you. I'm like,
answers, mate. Come on.
Yeah, I know. I don't have the answers, mate. I don't have the answers. We were thinking about doing it, but we wanted to make it look crisp and slick. And I don't know, maybe I just got to get out of my own head and start it. But I think it's actually helped in terms of if it's posting from my personal page, people feel like they can directly message me, and it's not really a brand. So that's helped, I think, maybe. So I'll keep you updated when we do actually have the Funny Business LinkedIn group, and see how different it goes.
We've done a few tests on it. We definitely get better engagement when it's posted out on your personal. The flip side to that is we're building a business and we need a business brand identity, right? And a lot of our hustle is building that brand attention, and we aren't cold calling and selling and smashing people DMs. It's more about building people's awareness of the brand and playing the long tail game, right? So they slowly find out about us and go, do you know what? These cats aren't too bad. I better give them a call. But I do buy into it on your side that you're selling yourself, right? So it kind of makes sense that it's a what's the voice you're talking through? Am I talking Funny Business or am I talking Lockie, right? I think that's it's an interesting argument. Yeah. Mate, thank you for your time. Super appreciate it. Did you want to say one last thing? Did you want to give Robbie a shout?
Oh, look, I know Robbie's a bit dirty. He didn't get the invite. He thought he had a good connection with you too, mate. So I suppose just suck shit, Robbie. It's been real. It's always a pleasure chatting with you, Toddy. Really appreciate you asking me on. Still chuffed.
That bottle of whiskey that you sent me had your name on it, Locke. So I assumed I had to give you the.
I am the King Brown nose. You know what I mean. Happy days.
All good. Thank you so much, and have a banging weekend. And we will be back next Friday, guys, with somebody else. Don't know who, but it'll be someone legendary. Cheers, boys.
See you, brother.